Over the past few months, I've been trying to find a good system for staying organized and boosting my productivity. As you may know from my previous videos, I also use Rocketbook's reusable notebooks for most of my note-taking. And while I like the templates that are included in the Fusion notebooks, I found I wasn't using all of them, and that the weekly agenda was a little too small for my needs, particularly in the executive size books, which is what I use the most. So I thought I would revisit my previous experiments with page templates to adapt a bullet journal style of agenda to the constraints of the Rocketbook notebooks. And after a few months of tweaking them, I've developed some templates that I find useful. I'll leave a link to a PDF that details these templates in the description below, along with affiliate links for the notebooks, ruler, and friction pens I use if you're interested in picking them up. One of the biggest limitations imposed by Rocketbooks is that you have to erase the pages completely every month to avoid staining. For this reason, I like to use weekly templates. I know the Fusion notebooks have a monthly template, but I didn't want to risk damaging my notes, and honestly, I use Google Calendar for event planning, so I didn't see the need to replicate it. My weekly templates begin with a general task list that I use for tracking to-dos that aren't yet assigned to a specific day. It doesn't track everything I do, really just a few tasks here and there, but it's quite helpful when I know I need to get something done, but I just don't know when I'll do it yet. This template is very simple. You have single letter indicators for the days of the week on the left side, followed by a column allocated to task bullets, then the remaining 8 spaces for listing the tasks. I generally start by creating a task bullet and labeling what needs to be done. Then each day that I make progress towards the task, I fill in the corresponding column and connect it to the main task bullet with a line. Then, if I finish the task, I cross it out, or I'll add a mark indicating that it needs to be carried over to the following week. I don't normally find a legend necessary, but just for clarity, these are the symbols that I use most frequently to indicate tasks, urgent tasks, events, moved tasks, and completed tasks. More commonly, I use a space beneath my task list for an inspirational quote that I can reflect on throughout the week. This flows naturally into my weekly agenda, which I use 2 pages for because I like to leave lots of room for each day. If it's too cramped, I tend not to write everything down, which leads to me forgetting to do things. Each page is divided into 3 boxes that are 15 spaces wide and 8 spaces tall, with the leftmost space allocated for task bullets similar to the previous page. On both pages, I use the column nearest the spiral binding for the weekday titles, because I find this is unused space otherwise, and this helps to avoid the discomfort of bumping my wrist up against the coil. On the left page, I leave the top row as a weekly title block, and I leave the bottom row empty on the right page, creating a slight asymmetry. I title my uploads according to which week in the year it is, because I want all of my documents appearing in chronological order when I look for them in Google Drive. This isn't perfect, as it can be challenging to know exactly which week in the year corresponds to mid-July, for example, but it's the method that I found works best for me. The only other noteworthy part of this template is that the final block is divided into 2 smaller sections corresponding to the weekend because I generally have fewer tasks to accomplish. Following the weekly agenda, I like to keep a small habit tracker. It again uses a vertical page title offset from the coil binding, as well as a 7-day single-letter title template similar to the task list page. Beneath this, the first 14 spaces correspond to a sleep tracker, where I can plot the hours that I slept the previous night, creating a nice visualization of how regular or irregular my sleep has been. Following this, I leave 5 spaces for general habits, which I indicate using single-cell icons, which, as I go through the day, I fill in if I complete them. Then I can tally up the number of times I accomplished each habit using the final column at the end of the week. At the bottom, I track how many times I've refilled my water bottle, using either a filled-in or hollow circle, depending on whether it was a 500 or 750 milliliter bottle, allowing me to sum up how much water I've consumed throughout the week. This habit tracker is the most recent addition I've made, and I quite like how it helps me to notice when I've stepped away from my goals for a few days. Otherwise, I find a way to fool myself into thinking that I've been better than I really was. The final 2 pages of my bullet journal are both very simple and similar. I use them as unformatted brain dump pages that collect all the little notes that I want to write down, but that I don't think need a dedicated page in my notebook. So things like grocery lists, significant numbers, or notes to self. I again use an offset vertical title to force my hand away from the coil binding, but otherwise no real rules or guidelines apply. The first page is a general brain dump that I use for work and home, while the flip side is one dedicated to YouTube video ideas or questions that I think need to be answered in my video each week. And then it starts all over again. I find keeping 2 weeks worth of templates helps a lot because I can allocate tasks 1 week ahead of time, but it also takes the pressure off of Sunday night because I don't need to worry about uploading and recreating the previous week's journal before the next week begins. You could also lock these templates in using a permanent marker, but make sure you've tried it a few weeks to know that it's right for you. As I said at the beginning of this video, this is just my take on adapting a bullet journal to the erasing and coil binding constraints of the Rocketbook notebooks, so if you have your own, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below, and let me know if you'd like to see more videos like this. Otherwise, if you found this video helpful, please hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time.